Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tom Littrell. I'm the Outreach and Training Specialist here at ETC. Before we start, I was driving to work this morning, and I see this guy walking to work in a white shirt and a tie, and I thought to myself, dude, I am so much luckier than you are. I work at ETC. It was a great moment. The next thing, could last night have been any better? Could it have been any more special than that? How about Jackie Ernst and John Messino and Bruce Jordahl and David Linscomb and Matt Stoner? Matt freaking Stoner. Was that not good or what? So next year we're going to do Stairway to Heaven, so watch me for the changes. Here we go. So on to this morning's business. I used to work for a company in Texas called Verylight. We got into some legal battles with another company from Texas called High-End Systems. And this is where I first became aware of this morning's presenter. I heard they had this guy who was going to be kind of a problem for us because he was really good at explaining technology and he was very, very articulate. That guy was Mike Wood. He was born in the 1950s in Liverpool in the UK. Many years later, he realized that being from the same hometown as the Beatles would be lifetime bragging rights. He has a master's degree in engineering from the University of Cambridge. At Cambridge, he discovered theater and lighting and has worked in the entertainment industry ever since. According to him, he has never had a proper job. Mike moved to the United States in 1995 to join High-End Systems, where he became Chief Technology Officer. For the last 15 years, he's run his own consulting firm, working with many companies in our industry, including ETC. Mike considers himself very fortunate to have been in the right place at the right time for the LED revolution, and is proud of the work that he's done with ETC in that area. Art mixed with science, the use of technology to achieve art. These things fascinate him, and these things have kept him in theater lighting for the last 40 years. He's my go-to guy when I need to make sure that what I'm saying is correct. And we at ETC value his wisdom and especially his ability to be really articulate and really good at explaining technology in an understandable way. Please welcome to the stage our friend, Mike Wood.
Good morning, good morning. I'm told I've got to be articulate. Oh my God, it's the British accent, it's all bluff. I'm told that that's what makes it. So you probably read, or you might have read what I was going to talk about, the futility of color pickers. Before we get into that, I just want to explain why I think this has become such a hot topic recently. And it's all down to what Tom just said, which is LEDs. And the move to additive rather than subtractive color mixing. So it still never ceases to amaze me how quickly this has happened. If you look back to some little history before we get into the more interesting stuff, but look back over the last 100 years or so, not an awful lot happened. This is showing efficacy of lamps since 1940. Incandescent on the bottom there, just... oh, my laser doesn't make it. I need a LED. Incandescent struggling along at sort of 10, 15 lumens per watt. It improved a little bit with halogen, but not much. Thank you. Somebody's got a nice laser. Thank you. Good man. Thank you. And then we've got HID discharge lamps. They were obviously much better, and they've increased slowly over the years. Compact fluorescence came in, but then wham, LEDs all of a sudden in the current century just took off and eclipsed everything in an incredibly short period of time. This is a true disruptive technology. This shows you a little bit of where LEDs have come from and where they're going. Started out 50 to 100 lumens per watt. Right now you can buy up to 150 lumens per watt. And the prediction is we'll end up around about 200, 250 lumens per watt. We should put that in perspective. Can lumens per watt keep on increasing forever? No, it can't. I mean, there's a limit. And the limit for white light for incandescent or colors or for a daylight color temperature is around about 300 to 350 lumens per watt. That represents 100% efficiency. You know, every electron going into the light coming out as a photon would be about 350 lumens per watt. So that is the limit. It can't get any better than that. So when you think we're looking at 250, we're talking about, you know, 60, 70%, 75% absolute efficiency. That's just incredible. So what makes that particularly interesting, I think, is that this change to LEDs is not a once in a 10-year event or a once in a lifetime event. It's a once in an ever event. There can never be a technology that comes along that has the increase in efficiency that LEDs have had over incandescent or discharge lights. It just isn't possible. Other technology could come along that has maybe other advantages, but it can never be any more efficient because we're already at almost 100% efficiency. So when Tom said there, I feel incredibly fortunate to be alive and working in the industry now, that's why, because this will never ever happen again. We are seeing a revolution that I think is bigger than the change to electricity, or even the gas lights or any of that. We're seeing a final change in efficacy. So, you know, and we're here right now watching this happen, and it's happened very quickly. So you can ignore disruptive changes like this. You can try to. Ken Olsen in 1977. No reason anybody would want a computer in their home. Barron's magazine in 1999 said Amazon was going to bomb. Complete disaster. That's what really happened with Amazon, as we know. The rise of e-commerce is a similar kind of disruptive event that's happened over the last 20 years or so. Disruption is a similar kind of disruption where you look at the rise of mobile phones, cell phones, versus landlines. They crossed over in 2001, 2002. The data I have stopped in 2010, but this has continued, and landlines have continued to drop. Reaching the point, I think, where there are more mobile lines than there are people on the planet now. Because your car has one, and people have two or three. This is a similar kind of thing. This is if you were in newspaper advertising when the internet came in. Is this equivalent to somebody making incandescent lamps? It's very similar. It just went off a cliff in 2005 with the introduction of web advertising. This is kind of my favorite one. Do you remember Encyclopedia Britannica? I'm sure you remember it. Just a knock on the door and come in installments. It started to die with Encarta. Do you remember Encarta? That was the beginning of the demise of Encyclopedia Britannica. But then Wikipedia was the final nail in the coffin, which also killed Encarta and all of that. So we can learn by all that. That's all by way of introduction, because we're in that revolution. And I think a major part of that revolution has been the move to additive color mixing rather than subtractive color mixing. And I think what that has made happen is people now, designers and so on, because they're not picking from a gel book and picking a fixed color, kind of a fixed color, a reference color, they're mixing the colors they want. So they're putting more and more reliance on the color picker, the mixing system, whatever the desk offers, in a way for them to get the color that they want. And therein lies the problem, because what color do you want doesn't have one answer. This is a very simple image. This kind of summarizes my whole talk, because if I asked you what you were looking at there, I hoped you'd say, I see a red cylinder and a blue cone and a yellow platform on a white background. But if I asked you to really tell me what you see there, you don't see a blue cone. You see 50 different shades of blue. that your brain is telling you is a solid blue cone. But most of it is not blue at all. The same for the other colors there. And if you break it down a little bit, you're seeing this kind of range of colors. But you are telling me that that's blue. So if I want my color picker to show me the blue of that blue cone, well, which blue do you want? Your brain and your eye work together and tell you, oh, it's a blue cone, it's in shadow, I know what's going on here, it's actually a solid blue. But which blue? Some of these examples you may have seen before, but I like to show them, and I like you to think about them in terms of how this is happening to you every day on a stage or in a TV studio. You're in a very controlled environment, you're in a dark room, you have no frame of reference, you have no idea what white is, you're sitting there in the dark and you're lighting a stage. So these things that we might think of as illusions, they're not illusions, they're reality. It's what our brain and our eye do to try and make sense of the world. If our brain and our eye were absolute, then every time we went outside, everything would suddenly look blue. We'd go under a forest, everything would look green. It would be completely confusing. So we compensate all the time. I think that happens even more than we think on stage, because I say we're in this controlled environment. Couple of Rubik's Cubes, one lit with a yellow light and one lit with a blue light. So your brain again said, okay, these are probably the same thing, and there's a blue square there and there's a yellow square there, but in fact those two squares are exactly the same color. They're both gray, and even once you know that that's the case, I'll do it again, it's really hard to convince yourself that that's the case. You are completely taken in by the background and make assumptions about what color that is. So just once more. So the blue one there and that yellow one are actually both exactly the same. The same cube, a similar kind of illusion. Here we have a brown square on the top and we have an orange square at the front here. We believe that to be orange. We know it's in shadow. You won't be surprised when I tell you that brown and that orange are actually exactly the same color. Very hard to convince yourself. Even if I join them up, those are now joined up with 6 squares of exactly the same color. You still see the color change where it goes over the corner. It still goes from brown to orange when it goes over the corner. It doesn't. If I mask it, you can finally see that they are exactly the same. Turn that on and off a bit. So, which color on a color picker do I want? Do I want orange? Do I want brown? I mean, just the mere fact of your brain thinking something is in shadow completely changes the color that you see. Color isn't real. Color is a figment of our imagination. We're seeing these different wavelengths and we're assigning a color to it. Color is very interesting, I think, too, because most of our senses don't work this way. If we with our hearing, if we hear a high note and a low note at the same time, or play them together, we hear both notes. We hear the high note and the low note. We don't hear a note in the middle that's a mix of the two. So why on earth, when we see a red light and a green light together, should we see a yellow? Why don't we see a red and a green? We don't. We see a yellow because for some reason in our evolution, that made a lot more sense of the world by doing it in that way. But because of that, our color vision in particular, is almost completely disconnected from reality. It's what our brain interprets of these signals. And there's not really a direct connection. There's much more of a direct connection with hearing than there is with vision. This I find a particularly interesting one. Because this isn't just our interpretation because of background color changes. I believe this is also our interpretation because of the subject matter. So here we have, this is from a Japanese researcher, and it's fascinating. So we have 3 images of this girl. with a color overlay on each. In every case, all 6 eyes are gray. Let me start off by telling you that. So, but we see the one on the left, we see a blue eye. In the middle, we see a yellow eye. And on the right, we see a red eye. Okay, you could try and explain by, well, the background is one color, so we compensate and we go the other way. Okay, that's kind of traditional color science. But now look underneath. What I've done underneath is I've taken the same contrast, that's the same red as here, with the same gray spot. But to me, that doesn't look blue, and that doesn't look yellow, and that doesn't look red. They all look gray. So why should the eye there look blue, but that spot look grey? There is no difference in either the colour in the middle or the surroundings. I think we're being influenced by the subject matter in some way. I don't really understand it, but I just find it fascinating. So not only are we influenced by the background lighting, by what our eyes have come accustomed to, but we're also influenced by what the subject is that we're looking at. So, what do I pick? If I want to pick that colour, what is that colour? If I ask the computer, it will tell me it's grey. If I ask you, you're going to tell me it's blue. That one, you're going to tell me it's yellow. I think also the little red blob in the hair and the yellow blob influences your judgment as well. But that I don't really have an explanation for. But do you all not see the colours down here? I mean, you kind of get an indication of them, but I think nowhere near as strong as the eye above. I'd really want somebody to explain that to me. Here's just to prove it. But even then, it's difficult to convince yourself, but that grey bar is the same colour for all 6 eyes. Another stronger set. This time using coloured eyes. In every case, the eyes, the pair of eyes are the same colour. But the background, in this case, are all red, confuses us. And I think this is the adjustment to the background in this case. So there's 2 things going on there. The other thing that I think affects what we see as colour is our expectation. We have an internal model of the world, and we know what colour things are. We know that in this case, these warning signs, or they're not warning signs, but these signs are red. And so whatever we do, we continue to see them as red. The right one, there appears to be a blue mask over it, and in fact, everything that's red in there is grey. As you can see, I've pulled out the colours. But even with the pull-out, it's very difficult to see them as grey. And even when you start to zoom in, so this is now the grey version. There was no red there at all. That's grey. But I've just shown you the previous one, so now you're conditioned. You know that's red. And so it still looks red on the left. The one in the middle still looks red. It's only when you zoom right in on the square in the middle that you can finally see it as grey. So you are driven by what you know of the world, what your expectation is, and what your understanding is. Let me go back. That conditions you. You're now all conditioned. You now all know that's red. So when I go there, it still looks red. Even though there's no red there at all. Absolutely none. This one was famous. You remember this one? I thought, well, we can't do that. What we need to do... what we need to do is to have somebody else. So I did this in Photoshop, of course, but it illustrates exactly the point, and that's what I meant by this has become, for some reason, these have become popular in the sort of viral culture. But this stuff goes on stage all the time. In this case, Fred's polo shirt looks there to be black and blue, and here looks to be gold and white. The right-hand halves of both shirts are exactly the same. But look to be overlaid by some kind of filter. The left-hand halves are different and are coloured black and gold, and black and blue and gold and white. And with that clue, or that cue, we fill in the rest to match, because we know that's what polo shirts look like. So That, though it was a kind of meme and became over popularized, that again is going on stage all the time. When I come into a theater, the lights are dim, and I light this shirt. What is the audience actually going to see? What colors might they see? What color would you pick on your color picker? Just to prove it, grey bar, the ones on the right of each are exactly the same color. But it's hard to see. So the other thing that color pickers and additive mixing tell us is that you'll see this in some manufacturers' advertising. I'm sure not ETCs, but they'll say we can mix 16 million colors, you know. And anybody who's sat down with an RGB light knows that you can't mix 16 million colors. You can mix maybe a couple of hundred, and then all the rest are green and are no use to you at all. But how many hues are actually visible to us? And again, there are scientific answers to this. In controlled conditions, then we can get down to very fine gradations. But we're not in a laboratory, we're in the real world. And so on a day-to-day basis, how many colors can we distinguish? There's just 64 there, and I can clearly see them all when the black bars are in. When I take the black bars out, and this demonstration always looks a bit different every time I do it because it depends on how the projector's set up and all that. But in general, most of the colors are still distinguishable, particularly here, particularly here. They kind of all get muddy here and merge together. And that's only 64 colors. How about saturations? There I've got yellow, cyan, and magenta, just with 32 steps of saturation. You may see differently than I, but I can clearly see all 32 magenta steps. I can kind of see all 32 cyan, and I can't really see the steps in the yellow at all. They all merge together into something that looks like a continuous step. Red, green, and blue, similar. I can clearly see the steps in the red and the blue. Can't really see the steps in the green. Let's just do a color chase. So this is just a loop going through 60 colors. This is just 60 colors. So step, 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 step. And you can see all the changes there very clearly. At that point, can't really see them. Now they start being visible again. So as we go through blues and reds, we can see all these changes. As we go through green there, we can't see them so much. As we come back into cyan, we can see them again. If I go to 600, it's really difficult to see any steps at all. Perhaps you can see them in the deep blues. Again, it depends on the monitor. I'm looking here, I can see them in the reds. I can't see them now, can't see them now. I can see them there. I can start to see steps again there. So that's only 600 colors. That's not very many. So if we had 600 hues, about 30 saturations, we're only looking at a couple of thousand different options here, not 16 million. Yes, I'm exaggerating. We can see more than this. But as I say, from a practical point of view, I think we're really only talking about a couple of thousand different colors that you're probably going to use on a stage. So what we can see, though, is the slow changes. But the actual individual colors, not so many. This I find interesting. What this graph is showing is where we have the best, our human eye has the best discrimination between colors that are close to each other. The lower it is on here means that we have the best discrimination. So you can see we have really good color discrimination in the cyan region, and we have pretty good color discrimination in the yellow. Not so great in some other places. And what I find interesting about that is those areas almost exactly line up with the energy we don't have with RGB color mixing. We have this big dip in the cyan with RGB. There's just no energy there at all. But yet that's one of the places where we have best color acuity. And I think, and again this is my theory, I think that this helps to explain why RGB always gives you kind of cartoonish colors. They're always, I call it Disney-fied. There's always a not quite reality about RGB, and I think it's because we're missing, in particular I think it's because we're missing cyan. Cyan is incredibly important, and to a lesser extent missing yellow and orange, because those are the areas where we can really see fine gradations of color. And it's also the area, you know, just with a white LED, we're missing cyan again. So in this case, we do have the yellow, but we don't have the cyan. So I think this is part of the reason why I say a lot of white LEDs, and certainly RGB color mixing, has a real problem mixing natural skin tones and so on. Because the subtlety you need for skin tones is extreme, and cyan is actually really important for skin tones. There's blue veins and so on underneath the skin that are important to our perception of faces. And, you know, we're hardwired to be extremely critical about skin tones. You know, it's part of our psyche. So that missing cyan, I think, makes RGB in particular look bad on skin tones. The other thing that I wonder about, you know, when we're saying, is this color on this color picker what I want? Is color vision cultural? I think it probably is. There's not been a huge amount of research done in this. But we know that different colors in different cultures have different meanings. There's just some examples of what red means to different cultures, and you can do a similar chart for most colors. So again, your expectation of what that color is influences how you see it and how important it is to your eye. So a color picker that might work for somebody in Western Europe might be completely different for somebody in Japan or somebody in China or somebody in Africa. They may have different perceptions of which colors are important and how well the color picker works. Something else that I think affects all this, which is we all have tunnel vision. There are 12 little black dots hidden amongst that pattern, and you can see them, but I'm willing to bet you can't see them all at the same time. Your eyes are scanning over them and you see the black dot, and then you go off and you see another one, and the one you were just looking at has now disappeared. Your brain has built a model of this. Oh, I know what this is. This is a grey grid. Oh, there's a black dot, you know. But then as soon as your eye moves off it, you forget it again. And the reason for that is that our acute vision is very, very small. I mean, we think we're seeing 180 degrees or 170 degrees, but really what we're seeing is about 2 degrees. The area of the retina that is actually good enough to see those black dots, because they're quite small, is only 2 degrees, which is about the width of your thumb. So if you hold your thumb out at arm's length, that is what you're seeing of the world. That's the only place you can read, is the width of your thumb. That's the only place you see any detail. The rest of your vision is blurred and nowhere near as sharp. But your brain doesn't let you see that. Your brain adds all these little bits together and presents you with a picture of the world looking sharp and in focus. But when you've got something like this, your brain makes the wrong image. Your brain makes a model of the grey grid and leaves out the black dots. So you can only see them when you're staring directly at them. As soon as they go out of that 2 degrees, they're gone. So this is kind of how we see the world. If your eyes were fixed and your brain wasn't filling everything in, this is what you'd see. That rule of thumb, 2 degrees. And all the rest is because our eyes are scanning and filling in the blanks. Now, we take advantage of this on stage, you know, magicians, illusionists, sleight of hand. I mean, we're taking advantage of our very small area of acute vision. This also affects the way we see color, though. I mean, we see color differently in that small section than we do in the rest of the image field. So, again, when I pick a color, which color do I want? Do I want the color that I see there? or do I want the color that the rest of my eye sees, which are different? And if it's something you want the audience to focus on, like the talent or the dress that they're wearing, then maybe it's the 2-degree color. But if it's the whole stage, it's the backwash, it's the psych, then maybe it's the 10-degree color. And I don't know if Wendy Lukey's here, but she and I have arguments about that. If you're sitting in the back row of the balcony in the Radio City Music Hall, then maybe everything is 2 degrees, or 10 degrees. If you're sitting in the front row of the orchestra, it's going to be different. But we always the lighting is always sitting in the orchestra, 6 or 8 rows back, so they always have this fixed view, and they pick colors there, which may or may not be the same color somebody in the back of the theater sees. So here's another thing that affects what we see. Colored light, it's called the Helmholtz-Kohlrausch effect. Colored light appears brighter to us than white light of the same luminance. What the heck does that mean? Well, anything we see with color we assume is brighter than it is. All those colored squares are actually the same brightness as the background. And if I were just to, in Photoshop, say, convert this to a black and white image, that's what I get, because they're all the same brightness. But we see these, in particular, some colors. Again, I don't know whether you see the same as I do here, but the green looks particularly bright and the red looks particularly bright, way brighter than the background. But it's not. If I ask you to match the brightness of the little squares, the little yellow squares to the red square behind, or the little yellow squares to the blue square behind, my guess is you're going to pick one of the in the bottom row here, something like that. In actual fact, it is the center one in both cases, that the brightness is the same. But we see reds and blues much brighter than we see yellows, so the yellow kind of disappears, and we end up matching a much brighter yellow than we should. That's actually, if I go to brightness, that's actually what they are. These at the bottom are way brighter than the background, but the blue pops out and the red pops out, and we don't see them the same way. This is not an insignificant effect. This is a huge effect. It can be two times, 2.5 times. We might see a red or a purple as being 2.5 times brighter than a green, even though they are exactly the same brightness. So again, when you're picking a color, this makes a huge difference. You've got to adjust the brightness as well. Here's this one's perhaps a little difficult to see. What this is showing is that these are target colors. So this is full red, full green, full blue. And this is a gray square that's actually of the same brightness as the target. And this, on the right, is what a subject, when asked to make a red that matched that in brightness, actually did. So they see this gray much, much dimmer than the red, and they ended up matching a much darker red. Again, just showing you that we see reds, in particular, much, much brighter than they really are. This is a test pattern. You've probably seen for testing monitors and so on. Now we know, because of the way this is generated, we know that the brightest part of that image must be the white at the top. The red LEDs are on, I'd say guns, that just shows my age, doesn't it? The red, the blue, and the green emitters are all on at 4. That must be the brightest part of this image. Must be. You know, here we've got only red is on, no green nor blue. Similarly there for green, similarly there for blue. But the brightest part of this image to most people looks like the line across the middle, where the colors are fully saturated. So you've got fully saturated red, fully saturated green, fully saturated blue. In fact, you can kind of see a ghostly line across the middle there, which isn't there at all. So even though we know that this is much, much brighter than this, it doesn't look it. Colors look much, much brighter than white. And we take advantage of that all the time. You know, you're doing a lighting demo or something and you put things in colors, the light can look really pop, but you know it's much dimmer than it is in white, but it doesn't look it. And so we use that both consciously and subconsciously when we're lighting. The other thing that affects, going back to incandescent, was the color temperature of the lamp. Even when you were using an HPL and a piece of gel, did you get the same color every time? Of course you didn't. You know, it's just a guide. If you're using a 2900 Kelvin lamp or a 3200 Kelvin lamp, you get completely different colors. A Roscoe 69 lit with a long life lamp and a Roscoe 69 lit with a short life lamp are completely different colors. But we still bring out the swatch books and say, that's the color I want. Well, which color? which color? So I guess my message from all this is color pickers lie. They can't do anything else but lie, because your eye and your brain make up the colors that you see, and you're never going to see the same color twice. The color picker can only be a rough guide. You have to look at the stage, you have to look at what the camera sees. Don't give the developers of the desk a hard time when you pick a color on that nice chart that they've given you and it doesn't exactly match, because it can't. It can never match. If I do it in this room, I do it in that room, we're going to get a different result. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike Wood. Hey, so that concludes this morning's keynote. Your first class starts at 9:30. We'll see you there.